The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavioral loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. My life obsession never really was about philosophy or science or spirituality. What I really cared about most of all was just the truth. Like, I cared about truth more than anything else. And from there stemmed the Hyper-Philosophia and this obsession with rationality and logic. And I would have never guessed that it would have led me to this weird mystical space that I'm actually now trying to, deconstruct and put again into a more understandable, analytical place. When you say the truth, it always sounds so preachy. Like when I say, I have found the truth of the universe, or I've found existential truth, and I can help you find existential truth as well. It immediately has this like vibe as if I'm trying to sell you something. And it is very difficult to get the stench of the word truth, because for all of human history, it has been misused, right? Like, the ego is what lies. It is there to lie and to accumulate wealth and power through lies. So most intelligent people have a lot of resistance towards anything that claims to be the truth, because, hey, how do you know? And this level of skepticism is healthy. Like, how do you know that what I'm going to tell you in this video is accurate? I'm going to tell you how. So the truth can actually be discovered, which is the first thing that we need to agree upon. And if we don't agree upon this, then there's already a very important conflict here. And most very philosophically inclined people will tell you, likely, that everything is subjective. There comes a point through a lot of investigation where you reach towards a sense of nihilism, where like objective meaning starts to lose logical sense, because there's no real place to ground it with except just human perception. And then you start to ponder and notice, okay, everything seems to be perception. Like, I have my perception, you have your perception, an animal has its perception. So there's no real truth, and all is just this subjectivity emerging. And from there, you might then believe that objectivity doesn't exist, and it's just all subjectivity to the core. And to a certain extent, it is a higher state of awareness to recognize how important subjectivity is, right? Because if you are stuck in egoic objectivism, then you're going to claim that your own neurotic perception of reality is objective truth, when it is all biased towards your own sense of self-preservation, sense of self-importance, sense of social hierarchy. Like, all of these things feel very solid and objective when you live in like the dream state. What a spiritual teacher would say. So the truth is not found in conceptual frameworks or analyzing mental maps that try to map out reality. It comes down to the sentence, the map is not the territory. If you have a well-drawn map from space about all of the Himalaya mountains, if you have to travel through them, it is a completely different beast than if you just look at the map the entire time. Actually, if you look at the map the entire time, you will never move through the mountains. You'll get stuck or die. Now, to ground this in more immediate experience, it is quite simple. If you perceive something, like, for example, you are perceiving my face right now, if you're looking at the screen, and if you're not looking at the screen, well, you surely are perceiving my voice right now. This perception is true. There's no way to analyze it, skirt around it, or like try to change it. It is simply the case that you are hearing something right now. And the philosophical mind wants to make it into a philosophical problem. Like, but what if my hearing is just an illusion from, some other dimension, or my own brain is just a brain in a vat, and my entire life is just hallucinated, and therefore I might not actually be hearing you, and I'm just imagining that I'm hearing you. This is where, this intense skepticism plus subjectivism usually devolves towards. But if you ground yourself a little bit, then these questions, it's not that they are just silly, right? It is important to note how unreliable perception really can be, and how biased perception is. I mean, my entire channel is about how biased perception is. But your own perception is still what is happening. Like the fact that you are listening something is not something that you can actually deny. You can, in your mind, imagine some sort of important difference between you listening to my voice, or you being a brain in a vat listening to my voice, or you're dreaming right now and listening to my voice. But the immediacy of your own perception is not something that you can deny. This becomes very obvious in the relationship to our suffering. And you can also find why suffering is such a key ingredient to what makes life real. It's the capacity to suffer that shows friction between your life circumstance or reality and your own death or your own dissolution. So there is something there that feels uncomfortable, and therefore you must move away from this uncomfortable feeling. This loop can now be analyzed or explained away through synapses in the brain or whatever, but you are actually removing yourself from what is actually true now. If you just say, well, my pain experience is just neurons in the brain firing, then you are trying to relativize something that in its immediacy is quite intense. And I had this debate with one of an old friend of mine who was like hyper materialistic and said that all that exists is the material reality, and all of consciousness is just pure illusion, and therefore consciousness is not really real. Like reality is not really real in that sense. And my argument always was, well, you wouldn't be able to make this argument if I punch you in the face or if I try to kill you. Like at the moment real physical experiential conflict is involved, like all of these arguments fall out of the window because they are not relevant anymore to immediate experience. In the same way, when you look to any sort of qualia, be it, the voice, a punch in the face, or the pleasure of experience, all of it is absolutely, to its maximal extent, real. And the only way you are going to know this with certainty is via recognition. Truth is something that is recognized. It is tautological. It's like 1 + 1 is 2. And if you start to doubt that, well, we can like dissect, okay, what is 1 unit of a thing? What does plus mean and what does 2 mean? And you can kind of doubt it and then get to it if you want to be complicated. But then if I tell you 1 = 1, now we are in a complete tautology, and you cannot move away from that tautology. And if this framework of tautology sounds very interesting to you, then I recommend you watch this video about me really breaking down what a tautology is and how it's like the most foundational building block really of our own experiential reality. And in the sense, you are going to experience your own life like a tautology. Like you can not change how your life flows the moment it is how it is like. It is just true in its immediacy. And it took a while for me to get to the point where I felt certain in this. And to me, it became very obvious when I asked myself the question, imagine how it would be like if there were like aliens or otherworldly beings, and they would have the ability to see all what is true. If they then don't also experience everything that every living being is experiencing, well, then they wouldn't know what is actually true. They would have to include conscious experience in whatever their framework of reality is like. Like imagine you look at planet Earth and look at humans and look at all of life and just dismiss all of qualia and dismiss all of consciousness, it would be, utterly ridiculous. And recognition is so important because it is also where empathy happens. When you look somebody else in the eye and you can feel their liveliness, it happens purely by recognition. You cannot prove another person's consciousness. You can also not prove your own consciousness to another person. So the only way this works is by recognizing that there is something real at the other side. And there's where things get confusing, right? Because if we recognize something and then we are wrong about it, then we feel very, very uncomfortable. We feel very uncertain about ourselves. And we wonder if there was truly a recognition there in the first place. And this is where this hyper-skepticism comes from, because it is very uncomfortable to be wrong about your own perception. And oftentimes what people think is recognition is just really a hardened belief structure. And then this belief structure cannot be questioned anymore. And recognition really is moving something to a point where it cannot be questioned anymore, because it's just so immediate. And when you really feel completely whole psychologically, then all you are is really a constant stream of recognition, because everything you are is just qualia and sensations. And it is very difficult then to be hurt in your identity, because you know exactly what you are at all point in time. And this often might feel like you are omniscient. And here it is where it gets kind of mystical, because when you see through the illusions of egoic beliefs and false identity structures and false social hierarchies, and you start to dissolve into present moment experience, then all becomes the sense of truthfulness and recognition in alignment with truth. And the ego is actually the thing that is skeptical and wants to doubt all the time, because when it stops doing that, it dissolves through recognition towards life and towards pure awareness. This process is difficult to do alone, and you might get trapped in a lot of tricks your mind plays on you, because we are all full of doubt and insecurities, because we have been trained by other egos to act this way and to not overclaim our confidence, to not appear arrogant, to not to pretend that we cannot know what is true and that we need an authority figure to tell us. And this is why we are looking for philosophers and spiritual guides and always somebody else who is supposed to tell you what is true, like the priest or a god or whatever it might be, when the real truth can only be found through direct recognition within yourself. All belief is pretense. Everything you hear from somebody else is pretense. You can only know if what I'm saying here is true if you're recognizing it for yourself, and if you dissolve the doubt that is present in this process. If you want to accelerate this process and be challenged in your beliefs and understand truly where it is where your ego is coming from and why it is behaving the way it is behaving and why does life feel like the struggle, then check out my ego architecture audit in the PDF. It is an ego analysis that I facilitate for people so that they can get greater clarity and understanding of themselves. It makes this entire dissolution process much more pleasant when you understand that the crazy stuff you're going through is actually a pretty normal part of the process. It's just not recognized by modern psychology for the most part. The trick that most people fall into when they are starting to recognize parts of truth is that they then identify with what they're recognizing. So you might, for example, dissolve into a sense of awareness and then have like a sort of God realization, for example. You might then believe, oh, I am God, I am all of existence, I am awareness, I am truth. And then you cling to this idea, and despite there being some profound truth underneath it, language and the way the brain is processing the stuff actually makes it so that you're starting to be identified with a concept again. And then the idea of being love, or being God, or being the truth, or being whatever becomes a new conceptual framework. It is very sneaky the way the ego does this, but it happens again and again. And oftentimes you just need to recognize the pattern, notice you're identifying again with something, and then, you slowly fall out of, this pattern to always need to cling to an idea in order to feel, solid. And recognition is really the way you dissolve the egoic conditioning. It is noticing what is actually going on within you. And it is difficult because of how much we lie to ourselves. And it is the lying that wants to prevent all of the recognition. There's so much that we try to not want to look at and not want to admit about ourselves or admit about how we feel towards other people. And recognition relates to acceptance, because if you do not accept something, you cannot recognize it as true. So you doubt it. And then you fall into an endless doubt spiral where you can never be truly whole because you're always doubting your own wholeness. So skepticism and doubt is, a crucial pillar that needs to be, dropped away in order to come closer to what is actually true. Frameworks are awesome, and I love frameworks. They're a lot of fun to play with and teach with and point to what is true, but they are not what is true it by itself. It is a map. And as long as you don't confuse the map for the territory and are always pointing again at the immediacy of your own awareness and your ability to truly know something, you will find truth.